People around this country, and for that matter around the world, are reacting tonight to the terrible news of the death of Robin Williams. A statement from his wife confirming his death alludes to his battle with depression, and now we know why.
Somebody gave me a picture. Some artist drew pictures of Brody for everybody, and I put it in my back seat without looking at it. And the other night I went to the car and I found it, and I almost had a fucking heart attack. But now I'm mad at Brody. Well, I'm at the anger period with Brody right now. Like, I don't even want to see his fucking face. Like, when I saw that picture, I'm like, that was just a mask you were wearing.
Yeah, I go the other way. I feel sorry for him.
Such a hard one to take because everyone loved that guy.
So heartbreaking that such a funny guy.
Yeah.
So we hate to lose comedians.
You know, why is it so many times the people who are the funniest deep down have a horrible sadness?
I've thought about this question a lot, since it pushes a few personal buttons for me. A theory I thought about a while ago and has kind of been solidified while creating this video is that the reason why we laugh shares a similarity with trauma. I'll explain what I mean by that. What makes something funny most of the time is its incongruity. The setup leads us to believe one thing, but the punchline gives us something completely different. It surprises us. And something else that's also surprising is trauma. Usually with traumatic experiences, the setup is a different story than the final result. Like going out for ice cream and having a terrible car accident on your way, or a child's parents getting divorced and being abusive with each other when they should be loving and caring. The sense of incongruity is palpable for both instances, when something is funny and also when something is traumatic. Traumatic events exist on a wide spectrum. The most common traumatic experiences are the death of a loved one, a divorce that wasn't handled peacefully, physical pain or injury, serious illness, war, natural disasters, experiencing acts of violence, sexual, emotional, or physical abuse, and many, many others. But outside of these well-known kinds of trauma, when we're children, we can also be traumatized by things that are not so obvious, like neglect. To understand who we are now, it's important to take a look at our childhood, much in the same way that to become an adult, you have to first be a baby, then a child, then a teen, until adulthood. For the brain to fully develop who we are with all of our unique quirks and sensitivities, we have to live through these phases too. And so who we choose to be or not to be right now is a cumulative combination of our life experiences. Something at the center of our life experience is our interaction with others. Attachment is defined as the emotional bond between people in order to establish a sense of security and safety. And although attachment starts in infancy as we're dependent on our caregivers, the need for attachment in relationships continues throughout our entire lives. So as children, after we have a safe and secure attachment to our parents, we start to also seek out other family members and friends that we can form attachments with. We do this even if we don't have a secure attachment at home because we're social beings, and as much as we might not like to admit it, we need others in order to function and stay healthy. Now, a big part of being social and creating these attachments is sharing parts of yourself with others and creating connections based on similarities and ways we can relate to one another. And it's hard to share stories and feelings if most of what's happening to you is negative. Then you might become someone that people don't really want to be around because that would turn you into a downer. And don't get me wrong, people want you to share parts of your life that aren't perfect. It helps them relate to you in the way that their lives are not perfect either. But the socially acceptable way to do it is to an extent, like complaining about having a boring weekend when someone asks you how you spent your Saturday and saying you caught up with work and just cleaned the house, nothing eventful. Complaining about that is okay and relatable, but if someone asks you how your weekend was and you go on to casually mention that the reason why you didn't leave the house is because you have crippling anxiety, you don't know where it came from, and also you're late on all your bills, so doing anything that involves money didn't seem like a good idea, so you decided to clean the house and double down on work so you can feel like you have control over something, anything, then the conversation might get really uncomfortable really quickly.
But on the inside, we're like this deformed monster with superpowers. We can't show that to people because it makes them feel icky on the inside. It's like using the word moist to describe a cake.
So when we're dealing with an overwhelming amount of negativity and issues in life, we need a way to share those experiences. It's rewarding and healing to share who we are with others. We need an outlet. The pain has to come out somehow. It doesn't just go away. So when we find our experiences may be a little too dark to share, we change things about them and make them funny instead of uncomfortably dark. And now we're not only able to share our lives and feel like we belong, but we make people laugh, which is in its own welcoming, accepting, warm, and desirable.
Over the years, I have tried Pamelor, Nortriptyline, Wellbutrin, Zoloft, Paxil, Abilify, Adderall, Effexor, Celexa, Zyprexa. At one point, my doctor said, let's just try drugs that rhyme.
Comedian Gary Gulman makes jokes about his depression because he has to.
A lot of the men and women who make people laugh for a living often struggle with mental health challenges off stage that are no laughing matter. Of course, not everyone with a troubled childhood or a different kind of trauma is funny, but there are scientific reasons why a lot of them are. The sad clown is a well-established cultural trope, but it's also a psychologically verified part of the human condition. Humor is a coping skill, and it's rooted in resilience. When people have something to overcome, it makes sense that they might become more adept at laughing through the pain. Dr. Nancy Irwin said, trauma can lead to overcompensation through humor, or overachievement in a number of ways. Humor is one of the highest forms of defense mechanisms to cope with pain. And it seems like Dr. Irwin would know. She's not only a psychologist, but she also used to be a comedian. Now, the link between early pain and a sense of humor was acknowledged long before psychologists like Irwin came along. The connection was first recognized by ancient philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, who suspected that humor helped people build themselves back up after being knocked down. Later, philosophers like Kant and Kierkegaard built on the idea. They believed that the core of humor was a sense of incongruity, like I mentioned before, and a difficult childhood was incongruent with the joy and wonder of being a kid. Recent theories suggest that humor not only curbs depression and hopelessness, but it might be an adaptive response for some people to get through trauma. A recent study published in the journal Frontiers in Psychology helps explain this idea further by analyzing the childhood of over 200 professional performers. Results were really interesting. They revealed that the more adverse childhood experiences participants had, the more intense their creative experiences were as well. While they did not look at comedians specifically, clinical psychologists noted that these individuals were more likely to display personality qualities that are conducive to humor, like the ability to respond to situations with wit and frankness. Overall, they believe that these witty kinds of responses are tied to a sense of resilience, and this personality quality is characterized by the ability to recover from adversity. Based on this, I've started to theorize that maybe this is one of the many reasons why we like people who can make us laugh. There's something disarming and attractive about someone who can put a smile on your face. And while I'm sure this is directly linked to happiness and a better quality of life because of how important it is to laugh and feel good doing so, another reason could be because we subconsciously relate humor to someone being resilient. And having someone in our life that's able to navigate adversity and do it well may seem like they can help us get through our difficult times too. And they do, by making us laugh, but I'm hinting at that it can be a bit more subconsciously involved than that. Please let me know in the comments if you agree that this might be one of the many reasons why we really like people who can make us laugh. A large body of research suggests that resilience acts as a buffer for pain, and this quality is strongly associated with creativity. And of course, this doesn't mean that overcoming difficult times through humor is the only ingredient to becoming funny. You also need social support, being able to develop that secure attachment, exposure to humor, and intelligence. Humor might be a helpful coping skill, but this isn't always a good thing, and it's a response that can definitely backfire if it's not combined with other coping skills. Humor in itself can't be the only cure for pain because no one is capable of being funny all the time. Stand-up comedy is a solo art form that gives the comedian the space to express themselves, and a lot of positive attention, which they might have been deprived from before. But even with this, we see a lot of our favorite comedians struggle with substance abuse, depression, suicide, and all kinds of mental health issues. While comedy does its job at helping us cope, it can also create a confusing sense of self where you feel isolated or like you're surrounded by so many people who love you, but nobody really knows you. And would they love you if they really knew you? Your pain? Your mind? It's these kinds of questions that can lead to a stressful state of existence, where the lines between who you are when you hide your pain and who you are when you don't seem to blur. We saw this happen with Jim Carrey and a lot of other people, artists and otherwise.
When the curtain goes down at the end of the drama, the hero and the villain step out hand in hand, and the audience applaud both. Because they know that the hero role and the villain role are only masks.
You play characters, and then if you go deep enough into those characters, you realize that your own character is pretty thin to begin with.
And at a certain point, I realized, hey, wait a second, if it's so easy to lose Jim Carrey, who the hell is Jim Carrey? And there was this Spielbergian kind of rack focus at that point where, like Roy Scheider on the beach, where I was kind of watching from another place.
I suffer from depression and anxiety, and while I try my hardest to not let these things affect my daily life, they do sometimes. I had a difficult childhood, which might be an understatement, but we'll leave it at that for now, and it's very interesting for me to make this video because a lot of my friends consider me to be the funny guy, or girl in this case. If you're watching this video, you probably don't know a lot about me except for the fact that I'm an anthropologist obsessed with our human condition and that apparently I have a good voice for making videos. But when I'm writing my content, it's sometimes really hard to not include jokes or witty ideas into my videos. I really try not to do this because I feel like what I talk about is important, and I feel like if I make jokes throughout my videos, it might cheapify my material, or maybe in some way take away from the educational value that I'd like to provide. So please let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more of my personality in my videos, or if you like them just how they are. I wanted to highlight that in my experience, being funny and witty and finding the humor in things even when it's dark, well, especially when it's dark, really does feel like it can save you from the horrors of the things that you can't control, and much more so when you're little. It's essentially a good thing that results from bad circumstances, but this good thing that is being funny and finding humor in everything, just like anything else, can become bad when it's done in excess.
Well, let's take a vacation together with the kids as a family. Get you away from work. You're a different person. You really are. You're great.
Oh, Daniel, our problems would be waiting for us right here when we got back.
We'll move. And hopefully our problems won't follow us.
Daniel, please don't joke.
Okay.
Daniel was so wonderfully different and funny. He could always make me laugh.
They always say the key to a solid marriage is laughter.
But after a few years, everything just stopped being funny.
Why?
I was working all the time, and he was always between jobs.
Well, you never... I mean, did you ever say anything to him, dear?
Daniel never liked to talk about anything serious. I used to think Daniel could do anything, except be serious.
The jokes help, but jokes are not going to allow us to have healthy relationships. Jokes are not going to repair our trust issues. Jokes won't make us feel safe, and jokes won't heal the scared little kid that hides in our core. It's really important that we come to terms with our truth, and the truth is not sugar-coated or funny. So it's our job to show ourselves empathy and give ourselves permission to feel the pain so that it can heal later. Whether we decide to see a therapist about it, which I highly recommend, even if you think you don't need it, you might really benefit from seeing one. Or we decide to work on stuff on our own. When we bury our feelings, we bury who we are, and living a life that isn't authentic leads to even more emotional burdens that we really don't need. Because of trauma experienced in childhood or at any point in our lives, we may have learned to hide part of ourselves. And at the time, it may have helped us. But as adults, we need our feelings to tell us who we are and what we want, and to guide us towards becoming the people we want to be. Healing emotional wounds is difficult, and it's a lot easier to just ignore them and hope they go away. But it's also doable if you set your intention for it. If you ever feel alone in this sentiment, remember that everyone, absolutely everyone, has moments where they just sit there with their thoughts, wondering, doubting, waiting, hoping that someone will see who they really are. Whether we like to admit it or not, we're kind of acting all the time, and we sort of have to so that we can live life. Just know that there's always more than what you see, and no one ever really stops feeling like a little kid inside. Once you remember this, the world becomes a lot more relatable, making it an easier place to heal and grow. Please let me know in the comments how you feel that trauma has affected who you are. Has it made you funnier, a bit more withdrawn and quiet? Are you aware of what your traumas are, and are you working on them? Or are you just now opening up to the idea that acknowledging your dark times can be really beneficial? I would love to hear your thoughts. As I hope you noticed, you didn't experience any ads in this video, and that's because I've demonetized my channel so that it doesn't show ads anymore. This way I feel more connected with the message that I'm delivering, and I can attempt to just provide value, which is my intention. Almost 4 months ago, I left my job so that I can make videos full-time, and with that, I had to leave the United States so that I can afford to live humbly. If you would like to support my channel so I can continue to exist and make more videos and also make them more frequently, please consider supporting me on Patreon. I've designed really cool packages where you can vote on my next video topic, have existential talks with me, and much more. To visit my Patreon, click on the link on the top right of the screen or go to patreon.com/cognitive culture. You can also click on the orange button that'll show up in the middle of the screen at the very end of this video. Here's an incredibly special thanks to my Patreons: Mike, Jenny, Gabriel, Nadia, Edwin, Johnny, Chris, Elizabeth, Elvis, Rosie, Peter, Mark, Peter Lawrence, and everyone else that's contributed to other packages. You can find your names in the description of this video. Cheers.